Hi, everyone. As people are joining, feel free to introduce yourselves in the chat and use the Q&A as we're going through the presentation. We'll be answering questions at the end. We have a moderator here from Climate Solutions Accelerator um, for that portion. So I'm Katie. I'm a program manager with Causewave. One of the programs that we manage here is AMPED. And we have quarterly webinars, of which this is our fall one. Get the facts straight, learn what's coming with the All Electric Buildings Act. So we're going to get started with just introductions of the panelists we have today. I'm going to give a brief overview of AMPED, and then we'll get right into it. So we have John Lee, he's a senior advisor with NYSERDA. Vera, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing your last name, Voropeva, also with NYSERDA, Kristen Graham, who's the acting team lead with NYSERDA, and then, as I mentioned, Andre Primus with the Climate Solutions Accelerator. So AMPED is a campaign to raise awareness to help make the Genesee Finger Lakes region more efficient and resilient by supporting the transition to vehicles and buildings powered by carbon-free electricity. Our most recent initiative happened last year in partnership with the Finger Lakes Clean Energy Hub with support from NYSERDA as well as the Climate Solutions Accelerator. And that is a resource available to community members and businesses interested in electrification and clean energy upgrades to their facility or to their residents. And there's a lot of financial incentives available, and we offer one-on-one. The hub advisors offer one-on-one energy advisor consultations, as well as community outreach. This is just a little overview of the breadth of sectors that are part of AMPED. We have private businesses, nonprofits, government organizations, educational institutions. We kind of run the gamut and trying to bring as many sectors together as possible to try to address these common goals. And if you want to find out more, you can go to ampedproject.org to get started and just find more resources. Okay, great. So now I'm going to turn it over to John, who is going to talk about revisions to the New York State Energy Code resulting from the All Electric Buildings Act.
Thanks, Katie. Can you hear me all right? Great. Good afternoon. My name is John Lee, and I'm architect with the Codes Division at NYSERDA. We work with our partners at the Codes Division of the New York Department of State to advance the state's energy efficiency and clean energy objectives. I will be speaking today on the draft proposed updates to the construction codes of New York State, specifically the Energy Conservation Construction Code and the implementation of the All Electric Buildings Act. Next slide, please. The Department of State Codes Division has published on their website the draft revision to the New York State Construction Codes. This is part of the procedure to enact rules that effectuate the revision to the codes, the first step being the Notice of Rule and Development, which the Department of State published over the summer. The website address is highlighted in yellow on the screen, and the text on the screen is an image of the Department of State webpage that shows links to the specific language of how each of the construction codes are proposed to be amended. The Department of State solicited public comment on the draft proposal, and the public comment period closed at the end of September. The next step in the rulemaking will be the issuance of a notice of proposed rule, which is anticipated to be in December, and the format will be very similar to the documents that have been provided on this webpage. The Department of State groups the codes into the Uniform Code, which is the first grouping in this slide, and the Energy Code, which is in the lower part of the page. I'll get into some more details in later slides, but please be sure to visit the Department of State website for the most up-to-date information. Can I get the next slide, please? Thanks. As part of the code's update, the department is codifying the provisions of the All Electric Buildings Act that prohibits the installation of fossil fuel equipment and building systems in new buildings. Most building types, meaning residential, office, retail, warehouses, and schools, are subject to the regulation, while agriculture, manufactured homes, commercial cooking, and critical facilities are among the exempt new building types. The phase-in of the requirement will begin in 2026 for low-rise new buildings up to 7 stories in height and commercial new buildings up to 100,000 square feet in the floor area. Beginning in 2029, new buildings of any size are subject to the requirements. The draft revision to the codes does not specifically ban any appliance or component, as there are still lawful applications of those systems and buildings that are not subject to the All Electric Buildings Act that are regulated for safety and health purposes. Instead, the draft revision places the requirements on permits issued for new buildings. And these requirements can be found in the revision to the Uniform Codes and the Energy Code. Can I get the next slide, please? So as I mentioned before, the codes are grouped as the Uniform Code as seen in the column on the left, and the Energy Code, which includes the reference to standard ASHRAE 90.1. Currently, the 2020 edition of the Uniform Code and Energy Code are in effect in New York State, and these codes are based on the 2018 version of the model codes as published by the International Code Council. The Department of State is proposing to revise the New York State codes based on the most recently published International Code Council model code, which is now the 2024 version. I will be focusing on the amendments to the Energy Code specifically and the changes to the requirements for energy conservation in new construction. I should emphasize, though, that there are many changes that will update aspects of energy conservation in new construction that are regulated by the safety standards of the building code, the residential code governing homes, the fire code, the mechanical code, and plumbing code. The updates to the Uniform Code are significant, and while I'll not be going over those amendments in this particular panel, I would encourage practitioners in construction to become familiar with a whole body of proposed amendments and also to revisions to the Uniform Code. So next slide, please. So the scope of the Energy Conservation Construction Code includes construction elements of the building, such as the thermal envelope, the heating, cooling, and ventilation systems, and permanently fixed lighting systems in buildings, as each of these contribute to the energy consumption of the building. By thermal envelope, this means the minimum required levels of insulation in walls, windows, and doors. The thermal envelope must also be completely sealed to prevent air leaks. The heating and cooling systems, meaning air conditioners, furnaces, boilers, and fans, are subject to minimum efficiency requirements prescribed in the code and set by the federal government. The update to the code brings these efficiency standards to the most current edition. The lighting systems are regulated by power allowances on a per square foot basis of illuminated area, and the advances in LEDs with better controls mean new buildings can meet these standards and will not need to spend so much on those energy costs. I've highlighted in this screen in yellow the main hallmarks of the update to the Energy Code. The improved insulation requirements in walls, windows, and doors will result in better constructed buildings that reduce energy costs. The new requirements will also prevent energy losses that allow for equipment that is sized to the improved efficiencies and further reduce energy consumption. Together, these requirements will result in buildings that consume far less energy for heating, cooling, and hot water than buildings constructed under today's codes. And next slide, please. Here I've bulleted out the main highlights of the proposed update to the Energy Code as compared to the current, in effect, 2020 New York State Energy Code. First, as already mentioned, the updates to all of the codes includes the prohibition of fossil fuel systems in most new building types. The update includes significant improvements in the minimum levels of insulation in walls, windows, and doors, along with the improved efficiency standards for regulated equipment in line with the federal mandates. Solar photovoltaic systems are required on rooftops of commercial new buildings where there is sufficient space to accommodate a minimum size PV production. Thermal bridging, the components of the building structure that can conduct energy from the inside to the outside of the building, must be documented and mitigated. The update to the code also includes requirements for minimum energy credits. And these are credits that are described in the table of efficiency measures, such as better insulation or specific equipment types, which are afforded certain point values. And the design of the building must accrue a minimum number of energy credits in order to comply with the code. New residential buildings in climate zone 6 must be provided with energy or heat recovery systems. Electric resistant space heating is allowed under the All Electric Buildings Act. However, the size of the system is capped by the code proposal. Elevator and escalator equipment must meet new efficiency requirements. And finally, the climate zone maps have been updated, and climate zone 5 now includes the counties of Wyoming, Tompkins, Steuben, Schuyler, Discovery, Cattaraugus, Broome, and Allegheny. The next slide, please. The New York State Code Fire Prevention and Building Code Council is the government-appointed body empowered to maintain and update the Uniform Code and Energy Code. The Code Council is scheduled to meet on December 6th, and it is anticipated that the final proposed updates to the codes will be presented at that meeting following the Department of State's issuance of the Notice of Proposed Rule. The proposed rule documents will be subject to a 60-day public comment period, after which the Code Council is anticipated to convene in mid-2025 to vote to adopt the code revision. The codes would then go into effect approximately 6 months thereafter, no later than the end of 2025. I hope this brief summary has provided insights in what is anticipated for the code's update, and thank you for your attention. I'll turn it back to Katie.
Thanks, John. I'm going to turn it over to Kristen and Vera now for the next section.
Excellent. I think you can go right into the next slide, please. So thanks everyone for joining us. I am Kristen Graham. I'm the acting team lead for the new construction program at NYSERDA. During this segment, we're going to go over a really brief highlight of NYSERDA's goals, and then we will get into the new construction program's offerings and competitions that we typically host. So next slide, please. Thank you. So as I indicated, I'm going to start with a very high-level overview of New York State's nation-leading climate agenda. Most of the state's current building stock was constructed before energy codes were passed and are not constructed to be energy efficient. The CLCPA, also known as the Climate Act, is now law and has put New York on a path to achieve zero-emission electricity sector by 2040. New York is also supporting Governor Hochul's plan to achieve 2 million climate-friendly electrified or electrification-ready homes by 2030. This plan is supported by a series of legislative and policy actions and programs across NYSERDA's portfolio, including the new construction program. Next slide, please. Thank you. The new construction program runs an annual competitive commercial program called the Building Cleaner Communities Competition. It's been known as by a couple different names in previous years, but this is the current name for it. The program focuses on supporting clean, resilient, and replicable commercial buildings that create comfortable and healthy spaces for occupants and tenants. The program is available statewide and run through the New York State Regional Economic Development Councils, or REDCs, and we recently closed round 6 and will announce the winners in the near future. Next slide, please. Thank you. Over the last 5 years that the program has been running, 48 projects have been awarded funding. BCC serves as an important resource to push commercial market transformation. We're seeing significant growth in the following 3 areas. Disadvantaged communities, with just over half of the projects located in these areas. Commitment to using geothermal for space conditioning, with the most recent round featuring an enhanced incentive for integrating these systems, and a commitment to passive house certification. I would also like to alert everybody of a new single-family and townhome offering titled the Building Better Homes program that we are looking to launch in the very near future. Once that is launched, we will have a website up and running. If there's interest in that, please feel free to reach out to the new construction program. Next slide, please. Thank you. And now on to the new construction program's competitive multifamily offering, the Buildings of Excellence competition. The goal of the program is to spur the design and innovation of clean, resilient, and carbon neutral multifamily buildings that are protecting the health, safety, and welfare of the public, all at a predictable cost. The program supports the transition to electrification by eliminating fossil fuels that emit carbon dioxide and other pollutants contributing to climate change. This shift is essential as climate change increases risks to buildings and occupants in the form of flooding, rising sea levels, higher temperatures, and extreme weather events. The program continues to build on previous round successes. All of the awarded projects in round 4 are proposed as all-electric buildings pursuing passive house certification. Round 5 recently closed, and we will announce the winners from that round in the coming months. Next slide, please. Thank you. Buildings of Excellence has continued to evolve and now has a technical support and demonstration component. The program now offers comprehensive project support with funding for both project soft and hard cost investments through 2 separate RFPs, the demonstration RFP and the early design support RFP. These 2 RFPs work in tandem, enabling design teams to study emission-reducing methodologies through early design support analyses and use demonstration incentives to reduce hard costs and operational demands later on. Through a combination of both of these programs, we have awarded 81 projects, 59 are committed to passive house, and 21 are integrating geothermal systems, both across the market rate and affordable housing sector since the program's launch in 2019. We will now go into the RFPs a little bit further. Next slide, please. And I think, yeah, perfect. Okay, thank you. We'll start with the demonstration RFP. This is the RFP we initially launched in 2019, and this RFP supports developer and architect teams in later stages of design. The projects aim to demonstrate realistic cost reductions and significantly lower energy use and carbon emissions and enhanced building resiliency, all for scalable replication. The Buildings of Excellence program encourages the transition of electrification by mandating a baseline requirement of eliminating fossil fuels in building operations and employing tactics that will reduce peak load and per capita carbon emissions. In an effort to promote market transparency, continuously updated project data can be found on the Buildings of Excellence website. Awarded projects will provide data on construction costs and energy performance. Buildings of Excellence also offers dedicated funding for performance validation, analyzing operational data, and sharing actual building performance results. Throughout the previous rounds of the program, we've found that early projects are showing exceptional alignment with their predicted performance. Next slide, please. Thank you. This slide shows the historic cumulative data on the Buildings of Excellence projects awarded through the demonstration program. Highlighted project metrics include that 65 total projects have been awarded with up to $1 million each, providing over 8,000 housing units across New York State. 52% of these projects are 8 stories or taller. Nearly half are currently in construction or completed. 72% of the projects are affordable housing for low to moderate income families. Buildings of Excellence serves as the important resource to push the market transformation in the multifamily sector. So similar to BCC, we're seeing significant growth in the same following three areas. Disadvantaged communities. Again, we're seeing over half of the projects located in these areas. A commitment to the geothermal for space conditioning. We have 12 projects committed to using this system on the demonstration side. And then a commitment to passive house certification, with 70% of the awarded projects pursuing the passive house certification. This stat in particular is part of the reason that New York State is leading passive house growth across the United States when using the FIAS standard. Next slide, please. Thank you. Many ask where the Buildings of Excellence demonstration projects are located and what are their typologies. We have awarded projects found across the entire state, and they range from low-rise to super tall buildings. Some of the basic program eligibility criteria include that the projects are a majority multifamily use, and they can be new construction, gut rehabs, and adaptive reuse of buildings. We are looking for projects that are in the early schematic design stage at the time of submission in order to maximize cost-effective design interventions. And then projects can serve both low to moderate income and market rate sectors, but they should really be designed for broad scale adoption. As of round 4, projects can be included on Long Island, and this really serves to include the entire state of New York. Next slide, please. And then another important aspect to the Buildings of Excellence program is market dissemination. Awarded project teams are committed to promoting their projects and sharing information to assist in the acceleration of the design, construction, and operation of high-performance buildings. Projects amplify their information sharing by providing data on the construction costs and predicted versus measured energy performance, completing performance validation by collecting 2 years of operational data from occupied projects. Teams also share the insights gained by utilizing all these systems and design tactics out to the industry. And finally, working with NYSERDA and our industry stakeholder groups, such as AIA, Passive House Accelerator, FIAS, Passive House Alliance, in order to promote project awareness and lessons learned. To learn more about the program and previously awarded projects, please check out the Buildings of Excellence microsite, which features project descriptions, cost data, best practices, and additional information from all of the winners from the previous rounds 1 through 4. And now I will turn it over to Vera to discuss the Buildings of Excellence Early Design Support RFP.
Great. Thank you, Kristen, for that introduction. I am Vera Vorapayeva. I'm a project manager for the Early Design Support Program, which I'll now cover in greater detail. Next slide, please. So as mentioned, in addition to showcasing the demonstration projects, the Buildings of Excellence Program also offers the Early Design Support RFP, which funds technical support in the initial project stages. This RFP also supports the overall goals of advancing emission reduction in New York State's multifamily building sector. However, it differs from the demonstration RFP by focusing on firm-wide impacts rather than individual projects. It provides funding to design firms during the early phases, positively influencing the project's overall life cycle and addressing the high-impact opportunities at this stage. The support also responds to feedback from design professionals regarding the challenges of securing carbon-neutral commitments without initial funding. The program targets to share collected data to strengthen the design and construction industry, advance quality multifamily projects at competitive costs, and to generate interest in such carbon-neutral and electrified buildings in New York State. Next slide, please. Thank you. While funding is distributed to teams for project-specific studies, we hope that firms will incorporate the insights gained from this research into their broader practices and portfolios as a baseline approach. The program strives to enhance practitioner technical capacity, promote market development through comprehensive case study evaluations of Buildings of Excellence projects. This initiative supports in-depth analysis and feasibility studies especially beneficial for first-time teams unfamiliar with open enrollment or NYSERDA programs, or those looking to advance their emission reduction skill set. By supporting these selected teams, the program enables them to gain necessary expertise to not only drive participation along developers, architects, and design teams, but also enables practitioners to share their knowledge more broadly, enhancing the overall impact on the market. Through this collaborative effort, we are cultivating a more informed and capable design community ready to tackle the challenges of clean and resilient building practices. Next slide, please. In practice, this awarded funding helps practitioners reduce energy use and carbon emissions while enhancing non-energy co-benefits and resilience, with opportunity for scalable replication. These targeted case study evaluations boost design team skills and promote industry-wide emission reduction principles by disseminating this information to broader audiences for awareness. To date, teams have explored various aspects of carbon neutrality, including holistic efficiency, operational and embodied carbon reduction, and resilience. The image shown on this slide graphically scales the scopes of investigations, with Passive House encompassing high performance and fully electrified methodologies being the largest represented area of focus across the portfolio of EDS projects. On the next slide, we can look into the program study. Thank you. The program is actively compiling the key findings to support market adoption. For example, one completed report, excerpts of which are shown on this slide, from the Beacon project completed by Paul Castrucci Architects, generated a robust report on lowering utility costs in electrified buildings. This investigation explored the complexity of integrating full building electrification by examining equipment, installation, and affordability of operational aspects. The team explored peak load shaving and advanced building management systems to lower the increased utility costs associated with electrified power sources. Other teams have extensively evaluated the interior air quality benefits of fully electrified appliances. Such diverse research produced throughout the program offers a broad perspective of our energy transition to electrification. While the full reports are comprehensive and robust resources, they aim to represent the studied information in a clear and easily understandable manner for broad applicability. We're excited to announce the future launch of an expanded DOE website, which will feature these completed EDS studies and other valuable resources. Stay tuned for the launch of this future resource. And now on the next slide, we can hop a little bit into the logistics and opportunities to participate in this program. The Early Design Support RFP is currently open for enrollment until November 15th, 2025, or until funds run out. This is available on a first come, first served basis, offering $1.50 per square foot up to $150,000 per project, depending on size and scope. The application is a two-part process, which includes a design firm partner submission, where firms must demonstrate carbon neutral project experience and market transformation capacity, followed by a proposal of anywhere from 1 to 4 eligible projects. Next slide, please. The eligibility requirements for design partners and project qualifications are detailed fully in the RFP document. But here are the key project criteria that we're looking for in this RFP. The building associated with the proposed study must be primarily multifamily occupancy, must be located in New York State, can be new construction, adaptive reuse, or gut rehab, must be a minimum of 25,000 square feet, be in programming, concept, and early schematic design phase at the time of the proposal, and must meet the definition of carbon neutral design, which excludes the use of fossil fuels. Notably, EDS projects can submit to future rounds of the demonstration projects without affecting eligibility. And finally, the fundable design services scope includes additional modeling and investigations on carbon neutral performance, research on embodied carbon resiliency and non-energy co-benefits, application for third-party standards and certifications, economic analysis including cost or ROI, and enhanced marketing plans. Again, the full details of this eligibility, proposal requirements, and other logistics can be found in the RFP. If you think that you have the firm qualifications and a case study project in mind, we encourage you to apply to this RFP or to reach out directly with directed questions. I'll drop both Kristen's and my NYSERDA contacts in the chat shortly and a link to the RFP. And now with that, I'll hand it back for the Q&A portion of the segment. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen and Vera. All right, I'm gonna hand it over to Andre now. It looks like we have at least one question. If there are other questions, please feel free to drop them into the chat. And as I mentioned in the chat, we'll be sending out a copy of this recording with the slides and the relevant links as well after the presentation, or after this is over. So I will hand it over to Andre now.
Great. All right, thanks. So the first question we have here is around, I know that, John, you said that there is a meeting in December where this is being sort of approved. And this person's asking, is there any likelihood that there be any issues with the code being adopted? And they say most stakeholders are moving forward as if it will be adopted, and they're trying to reach these climate goals, but they just wanted to be sure. Do you think there's any issues with that, or is it just more likely that there'll be maybe some small changes from the public comment period? What do you think?
Well, procedurally, the documents that were published are showing the clear intent of the outcomes of the code revision. And so this is part of the public process, and there's a public comment that the department, that the government is soliciting. The there are the proposal is in alignment with what the law obligates us to do, and to the extent that there are issues, the public comments have, to my understanding, surfaced some technical considerations that should be accommodated, and but overall, the intent of the code is what is in the documents that have been put forth. Given that there is a public comment period, if you have an opinion about this, or at the very least would like to express support of the efforts of the agencies here, the public comments are certainly welcome.
Yes, having worked in public engagement before with planning processes, I know that you don't get enough comments of support. You get mostly people commenting saying this is what we want fixed. So do send your comments of support for this program. I have another question here, and again, please do put any in the Q&A here as they come to you. Looking at this RFPs, this is really good, and I see that they incorporate some technical assistance and stuff like that. Are there other programs besides the ones you mentioned, resources available to assist with sort of this electrification transition for maybe small developers, design firms, things like that?
So I will speak, so just for the new construction program, these are what we have open now. And I think it is important to note that the Buildings of Excellence demonstration is competitive. So there's a timeline and a time frame for that. And then similar with the Building Cleaner Communities program on the commercial side, again, competitive. So there's a time frame. So, but those are the demonstration projects. And in both of those, you can be a large scale or a small scale developer. So it's if your project, if your project fits the criteria presented out in the RFPs, doesn't matter the size of you as a developer. On the technical support side for Buildings of Excellence, so right now it is just for the multifamily space. But that's open enrollment. I'm pretty sure Vera said that, but just to reiterate, that's open enrollment. So you can apply to become a design partner today and not have a project maybe ready to go to get the technical support. It might be in the future, but you've become a partner, so you're ready to go when that project in real life comes forward and comes to fruition. The other note about on the early design support side for technical support. So this is for design firms, primarily probably going to be an architecture or an engineering firm. Um, we added, I believe not in this most recent round, but in the previous modification to the RFP, we added in a provisional status, and that is for firms that might not have the portfolio already that we're looking for. So we're looking to expand the scale in terms of firms that we would like to see, as long as you've got a solid project and a good letter of intent to enter this space. We do have a provisional status. So again, we're looking to build the scale of both projects, but also for the firms in order to really help and support the market as we enter into this new new era of, when things are required by code. So
Mhm.
hopefully that answered the question.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, the technical support on the early design project there looks really, really cool, really valuable. So I hope we get people up in our region taking advantage of that. Um, a quick sort of question relating to terms. I heard two different terms there. I heard electrified homes and electrification ready homes, and so I guess trying to figure out exactly, you also talked a little bit about uh, the new builds being the main thing that the code is applies to, but also for the RFPs, you were talking about also gut rehabs and adaptive reuse. Can you just define a little bit about like what's ready versus what's already electrified versus what's reuse?
Sure. So I can take it for the RFPs at least.
Mhm.
So what we're looking at in terms of RFPs is obviously we're the new construction program. So new construction is an easy definition. The gut rehabs, that definition is both in the demonstration as well as in the early design support RFP, but they need to be offline for, I believe it's 30 days. It's got to be a significant, it's not a system swap out. We're not in these programs are not meant for system swap outs. We have NYSERDA has some system specific programs like New York Sun, EV charging, things like that, that is just specific for those. We're looking more holistically. And then the adaptive reuse is we are looking to target, and we would love to see more of these, are the conversion of existing commercial or institutional space, office spaces into housing. Um,
Mm,
so
mhm.
that is sort of the niche we're looking there. And again, that is in both the demonstration RFP for buildings of excellence as well as the the early design support.
Mhm.
So we've seen some, and we're seeing them a little bit more prevalent in the early design support program right now. So we are really excited to see those continue. Um, yeah, so I hope that was an answer of the sort of the difference in terms of uh, new con versus adaptive reuse and gut rehab for the RFPs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've been seeing a good few of those sort of adaptive reuse projects here in Rochester. We have home leasing doing one with the old Hickey Freeman building that's involving geothermal, and we've had a lot of those downtown. So hopefully, maybe they can take advantage of this program. That's great. Um, Again, looking to see if there's any more questions. If you want to drop them in the Q&A. Oh, there we have one. It says for the BOE and BCC programs, how frequently are applications considered? How long does it take to find out if you're awarded? Just basically information about the deadlines and rhythms about that. I know one is open enrollment and the other one you just finished a round. So
So for both Buildings of Excellence demonstration and Building Cleaner Communities, we as I said, they're competitive. So for the Building Cleaner Communities, because it's run through Empire State Development and through the Regional Economic Development Council, it's run through the consolidated funding application or the CFA. So we, in terms of that schedule, it's dictated to when the CFA runs. So for folks who are aware of that, it's typically I believe it's like a middle of May through an end or middle of July, but we are not in control of that at all. So if we are going to run another round in 2025, it would be our round 7. It would fall to that schedule. We don't have confirmation if we're doing that or not, but that would be the schedule to look for commercial buildings. And then for buildings of excellence, demonstration, oh, I'm sorry. And then the awards for BCC are also at the dictation of when the other CFA programs are also announced. So I can't really give a good timeline for those. Competitive, it goes through an internal and external scoring committee. There's a lot of things that go on there. And then for buildings of excellence, this is more at our discretion for timing. And last round was, I believe we did an end of June open period, and it just closed middle of September. So that's what it was last year. Again, it varies based upon other priorities and other programs that we have open. And again, that's competitive, so it goes through a scoring committee. And it's a several month waiting period for all, the decisions to be made on those. But then the open enrollment early design, it's rolling. And we will review partner proposals, and project proposals, kind of together as they come in. So we try to be as, we try to get to them within a couple weeks to 4 weeks to review them. But again, it's kind of like what our priorities are and other things going on at the time. But open enrollment there. So that one's more that is for sure in our control versus the other two competitive programs.
That's awesome. All right. Let's see. Do we have any other questions before we start to wrap up here? Looking at the Q&A, looking in the chat, I'm not seeing any. We are at 12:44, so let me pass it back to Katie.
Thanks so much. Thanks to all of our presenters and to Andre and to everyone who joined. If you have questions that come up, feel free to reach out. You can email me. My email is on the slide, or you can, and I can direct it to whoever needs to see it. And as I said, we'll be sending out a copy of this for anyone who hasn't seen it or would like to go back and reference some of the materials that were shared. So thank you again, and have, oh, I see there's something in the chat. Oh, okay. Thank you. Have a good day.